My name is Martha Hayes. I'm 42 years old, and this is the story of how 3 years of loyalty, late nights, and sacrifice were brushed aside with one champagne toast, until I walked away, left my father-in-law's company in chaos, and found a better life than I'd ever dared to imagine. I can still hear Arthur's voice ringing in my ears that day, booming, cheerful, completely oblivious to the way his words were splitting my world in two. We were in the conference room, the long mahogany table polished so brightly it caught the reflection of the champagne flutes in front of each of us. Arthur, my husband's father, the man I had once admired deeply, stood at the head of the table with a proud smile. "I'm thrilled to announce our new regional director, my brilliant niece Lily Monroe," he declared. The room erupted into applause. I sat frozen, my hands limp in my lap. 8 weeks. That's how long Lily had been here. 8 weeks compared to my 3 years. I had built this department from 12 employees to 47. I had missed anniversaries, birthdays, and family dinners, thinking it was all worth it, because Arthur had promised me this promotion. 3 months ago, he'd looked me in the eye and told me it was a formality, that no one deserved it more. But apparently, family politics outweighed loyalty. I forced my hands together, producing slow, hollow claps. Arthur's eyes met mine for a brief second. There was something there, guilt maybe, but it vanished quickly as he moved on. "Amy has been such a wonderful mentor to Lily already," he said, that patronizing tone slicing through me like a blade. "I know she'll continue to support our new director in any way she can." Support. The word tasted bitter. Support the woman who had just taken my role? Support the decision that told me, in no uncertain terms, I wasn't worth more than a stepping stone? When the meeting finally ended, I walked to my office in a haze. Margaret from accounting patted my shoulder and whispered, "I'm so sorry, honey," before disappearing down the hall. I closed my door, sat at my desk, and stared at the 3 Employee of the Year plaques hanging neatly on the wall. 3 years of recognition, and none of it mattered now. My phone buzzed with a text from Joseph, my husband. "How did the announcement go?" "Finally official." "We'll talk tonight," I typed back. My fingers felt heavy, like even the act of replying was a burden. The rest of the day passed in a blur. People avoided my eyes or gave me pitying glances. By 5 o'clock, my cheeks hurt from forcing a smile. I was almost out the door when Arthur appeared. "Amy, could I have a word?" I sat across from him, the same place I'd been when he'd promised me the promotion. "Look, you're incredibly valuable to this company," he began. "Lily's going to need someone with your experience to help her get up to speed. I'm hoping you'll take on a senior advisory role too. Train my own replacement." That's what he was really saying. "Arthur," I said carefully, 3 months ago you told me this promotion was mine. What changed?" He shifted in his seat. "Business needs evolved. Lily brings fresh perspective, new ideas." 8 weeks of fresh perspective versus 3 years of results? I interrupted. "You're taking this too personally," he said. And then the sentence that cut deeper than any of the others. "Your family. Lily needed this opportunity, and frankly you're secure here. You don't need the promotion like she does." Family. Right. Family that saw me as someone to sacrifice for the greater good, never to protect or reward. I drove home in silence, the words echoing in my head. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the sun was dipping low. Joseph had dinner ready, but the moment he saw my face, he pulled out a chair. "Sit. Tell me everything." And I did. I told him about the toast, the fake congratulations, the casual dismissal of my work. His jaw tightened with each word. "Dad actually said you didn't need the promotion?" Word for word. "I'm calling him." "No," I said, grabbing his hand. "This isn't your fight. It's mine." But in that moment I knew. Something inside me had shifted. I wasn't going to just swallow this one. Not this time. The next morning, Lily bounced into my office at exactly 9 beaming. "Amy, I'm so excited to learn from you. Uncle Arthur says you know this department better than anyone." I gestured to the chair. "Let's start with the Morrison account." For 2 hours I walked her through everything, relationships I'd nurtured for years, clients whose quirks I knew by heart, the strategies that kept 47 people employed. And then during my lunch break, I overheard Arthur's voice through the thin office wall. "She's dependable," he was saying, "but we need someone with fresh ideas. Lily's our future." She seems so knowledgeable, Lily's voice replied. That's the problem. Clients are too comfortable with her. We need to shake things up. Then came the words that froze me in place. She's 42. Companies want young talent. We're doing her a favor keeping her on. She's predictable, reliable. She'll do whatever we ask because she doesn't have any other choice. No other choice. In that moment, something inside me went cold. They thought I had no other options. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The next morning I woke up before the alarm. Not from rest but from a clarity so sharp it felt like light cutting through fog. I lay there listening to the slow tick of the wall clock, feeling Joseph's steady breath at my shoulder. I'd always been the person who waited for the right time, the right signal, the right conversation. But when a person tells you you have no other choice, that's the signal. That's the right time. I slipped out of bed and padded down the hall to my small home office. The desk lamp cast a soft pool of light over bills and a ceramic bowl of paper clips. I opened my laptop. The cursor blinked in the empty document, patient and unwavering, like a heartbeat. I stared at the blank space for a long moment, and then I began to type. Dear Arthur. I wrote, and my shoulders settled as if even those 2 words released a weight I'd been carrying for years. Please accept this letter as my formal notice of resignation from my position as Senior Operations Manager at Alden Ventures. My last day will be 2 weeks from today, Friday, March 15th. I kept it clean. Professional. No accusations, no scorched earth, no list of receipts and betrayals I could itemize with dates and timestamps. The power wasn't in the emotion he'd dismiss as hysteria. The power was in my refusal to explain myself. 3 simple lines for the road I'd paved with my stamina. A signature that said I belonged to me. When I printed the letter, the paper came out warm and slightly curled. I smoothed it with my palm and felt the absurd urge to cry. Not because of what I was leaving but because of what I was claiming. I signed my name, Martha Hayes. I pressed the pen harder than necessary, carving a groove deep enough to feel from the other side. By the time I stepped into the kitchen, Joseph was pouring coffee. He turned, took one look at my face and set the mug down. You wrote it, he said, not a question. I did. He came around the counter and held me by the elbows, like I was something precious and heavy both. Are you okay? I'm better than okay, I said, surprised to find it was true. I'm done begging for a seat at a table I built. He squeezed once hard. I'm proud of you. On the drive in, I didn't rehearse a speech, didn't plan my expression. I just watched the city slide by. The bakery with the chalkboard sign always misspelling croissant. The jogger with the neon shoes. The morning dog walkers tugged along by animals too excited to wait for anything. Life moved. I didn't ask permission first. At the office, Marie at reception gave me her usual warm smile. Morning, Martha. Morning, Marie, I said, and I meant it. I was going to miss her lilac perfume and the way she tucked a Kleenex up the sleeve of every cardigan. Just in case. I rode the elevator up with 2 junior analysts who fell silent the second they noticed me, whispering as I stepped off. The news of the congratulations Lily party had metastasized into a rumor haze. That was fine. Rumor is just the echo of a truth no one wants to say out loud. I set the envelope in the middle of my desk like a paperwhite stone. Then I answered emails. I approved a purchase order. I answered Tom from accounting's panicked question about a miscategorized expense. I did my job for the last morning I would be doing it for him, for them. At 9:58 I stood, took the envelope, and walked the 27 steps to Arthur's office. Marie lifted a finger, 1 moment, then waved me through as soon as his phone call ended. He waved me in without looking up, scribbling initials on a printout, pen cap clenched in his teeth. What can I do for you, Martha? I'm stacked until 3. I set the envelope on his desk. You can open that. He pulled the cap from his mouth, sliced the envelope with his letter opener, and unfolded the page. I watched the movement of his eyes left to right, left to right. Then his face did something I'd never seen it do in all the years I'd known him. It emptied. The practice charm fell away. The certainty lost its footing. Color rose from his collar in a wash that crept up his neck and over his cheeks. You can't be serious, he said, and it echoed my life from the night before. But this time the words weren't thunder, they were brittle. This is Martha, this is impulsive. I gave you 3 years. I don't do impulsive. After we just promoted Lily, you're going to abandon the department? He stood, palms flat on the desk, a show of authority as rote as a pose in an old photograph. You know she relies on you. You promoted Lily, I said quietly. I trained this department. Those aren't the same things. He paced, silver hair glinting under the recessed lights. If this is about the promotion. It's not, I said, and it was true in the way that matters. It's about respect. And about the fact that you think I have nowhere else to go. He blinked. I never said. You said I had no other choice. You said 42 was old. You said I was predictable and reliable. I watched the flinch ripple through him when he realized I'd heard every word through the wall that shared his office with our break room. You wanted me to be the harness while Lily learned to steer. I'm not a harness. He sat again, as if the chair had just appeared behind him. For a moment, the office fell quiet enough that I could hear Marie tapping on her keyboard through the door. He steepled his fingers. What do you want? Title? Corner office? Compensation bump? Name it. I want to work where my contribution isn't a favor from the family. I smoothed the envelope's edge. I want to lead, not babysit. He leaned back. Martha, the truth is, Lily brings a fresh perspective. We need that. You're invaluable at stability. Stable bridges hold up empires, I said. But you don't want to hear that. He exhaled, slow and frustrated. This will hurt you more than you think. Leaving at your age, in this market, companies don't want middle managers in their 40s. They want energy. I am energy. You've just been siphoning it off to power your niece. For a second, a sliver of something like shame crossed his face. Then he put the mask back on. At least give us 3 months. Help transition major accounts. The Morrison relationship alone. I'll give you 2 weeks as the letter states, I said and stood. I'll leave the house tidy. But I'm not staying to raise your heir. I turned for the door. Martha, he called softer, and for the first time it sounded like he remembered I was married to his son, that we ate Thanksgiving at the same table, that I had once admired the way he built things from nothing. You were always the adult in the room. Don't make this messier than it has to be. I paused with my hand on the latch. I'm not making a mess. I'm cleaning one up. Back in my office, the phone started ringing before I sat down. Word travels at light speed when a familiar center moves. I let it ring. There's always a moment after a decision when the world tests it. You have to hold still long enough to let the test pass by like weather. I spent the next hours doing what I've always done best. Making order. I opened a blank document titled Transition. I mapped every account, every habit, every preference. I wrote down the way Mr. Morrison always called after lunch because he hated morning calls. The way the Anderson Group wanted weekly recap emails with 3 bullets and no jargon. The way to calm Aurora Logistics when their dashboard flagged phantom delays. Start with reassurance, then send a screenshot, then call dispatch. I created a tidy empire of my leaving. If they failed after I left, it wouldn't be because I left the place messy. At noon, Lily appeared in my doorway with that bright, eager smile that had appealed to Arthur because it reminded him of potential and to me because it reminded me of a child who had been told she was extraordinary before she had done anything at all. She held a pastel notebook with her name embossed in gold. Do you have time to walk me through the Morrison escalation flow? Uncle Arthur said. Yes, I said, because I keep my promises even when I am choosing myself. Sit. For the next hour I gave her the map. I did not give her the terrain. Maps are generous and fair. Terrain is earned. She wrote so fast the pen squeaked. Every once in a while she looked up with that polite, helpless question in her eyes. How do you know this? And I thought, by bleeding for it. I did not say it. She would learn or she would not. Either way, it wouldn't be at my expense any longer. After she left, Margaret peeked around the door, twisting a tissue. Is it true? She whispered. Are you really? I am. Her eyes filled. Good for you, she said hoarsely, and then because the real costs are always human, she added, I'm scared. I know, I said, and I did. But scared isn't the same as wrong. At 5, I shut down my computer and placed the transition document in the shared drive with meticulous folders. Accounts, vendors, templates, crisis playbooks. I could hear Arthur's office door open down the hall, his voice carry, measured now, rehearsed. He would tell the executive team I decided to pursue other opportunities, and that the department would rally together. A speech is a net you throw over a storm. Sometimes it catches only foam. On the way home, the sky bruised itself into violet, and I drove with the windows cracked, the air cool on my wrists. The neighborhood was alive with the small noises of normal life. Sprinklers ticking, a kid practicing trumpet badly, someone laughing loud enough to scatter birds. Freedom, it turns out, sounds like ordinary things you can finally hear again. Joseph met me at the door. How did he take it? Like a man who's watched a load-bearing wall walk away, I said. The image made him huff a surprised laugh, and then he sobered and pulled me in. I'm here, he said into my hair. We'll figure the money. We'll figure the next move. I'm not worried, I said, and felt how strange and true that was. I have work to do. For me. That night after dinner I went back to the desk. I updated my resume. Not with fluff but with numbers. Growth from 12 to 47 staff. Client retention at 93%. 3 consecutive years of revenue increase tied directly to my process changes. Operations, I wrote in the summary line, isn't paperwork. It's choreography. Then I did something I should have done months ago. I opened LinkedIn, toggled open to work, and wrote a short post. I didn't name names. I didn't air dirty laundry. I wrote, after 3 years leading operations, I've decided to take the next step toward a leadership role where merit and mission align. If you know a company that values relationship-driven strategy, predictable results, and clear crisis playbooks, let's talk. I hovered for a heartbeat and clicked post. Within minutes, the little red numbers began to bloom. Likes, comments, DMs from people I'd helped at 2 a.m. when a delivery had gone sideways. A recruiter I'd politely declined 2 years ago wrote, "Are you finally ready to talk?" An old colleague from a different city pinged, "My VP has been trying to solve exactly the problems you love." When I closed the laptop, the house was quiet. Joseph turned off the lamp and reached for me. "You okay?" he asked again in the dark, softer this time, as if the question itself might break. "I'm better than okay," I whispered. "I'm free." The next morning at the office, the air felt charged. People get quieter when they're afraid and louder when they're in denial. That day the halls were both. Tom from accounting brought me a powdered donut and cleared his throat 3 times before he could say, "You'll be missed." He looked down at his shoes, then up at me. "You did the work, Martha. We all saw it." I squeezed his hand. Mid-morning, my desk phone lit up with Arthur's extension. I stared at the blinking number and let it ring through to voicemail. 10 minutes later, an email landed. Subject, proposal. He wanted to talk compensation realignment, expanded remit, director level title. The words stacked so neatly they said nothing at all. It was a ladder made of fog. I answered with one sentence. "Thank you for the offer. I'm going to honor my letter." An hour later, Lily came by with a question about the Anderson Group's arriving shipment and a tightness around her mouth that told me the rumor mill had reported I'd said no. "I'm not," she began and stopped, looking suddenly very young. "I know I didn't earn this the way you did." I studied her for a moment. This was one of those forks that would tell me who I was going to be on the way out. I could have cut her down with a sentence. Instead I said, "You can start earning it today. Read the last 6 months of Anderson's recap emails. Call them this afternoon with a status update and 2 contingency paths if there's a delay. If they feel seen, they'll stay." She blinked. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," I said. "Do it." That evening, as I was shutting down, my cell rang with an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something nudged me to answer. "This is Martha." "Miss Hayes," a woman said, crisp and warm at once. "Rebecca Chin from Horizon Tech. Daniel Morrison gave me your name and said I should call you immediately." I sat slowly, a smile tugging even as I tried to keep my voice steady. "I'm listening. We're looking for a regional operations director. Someone who knows how to keep clients and teams aligned when the floor starts moving. Your reputation in this town is formidable. Would you be open to a conversation?" There it was. Not revenge. Not yet. Something cleaner. The universe handing me a door I would have believed was a wall if I'd stayed sitting in that old chair. "I would," I said. "Yes." After we scheduled the first interview, I parked in the lot and just sat for a minute with my hands on the wheel. A strange, quiet joy rose up, the kind with no fireworks and no audience. Leaving had been the show of force. This was the reward for letting the ground open beneath you without scrambling back onto the wrong shore. When I went inside, Joseph was at the stove, stirring marinara like a man who respected small crafts. He looked over his shoulder. Good news. I leaned against the door jamb and let it land in the room like a blessing. Horizon Tech wants to talk. He set the spoon down, came to me, and kissed my forehead the way he did the night we bought this house. Even, steady, certain. Of course they do, he said. Of course. That night I slept without dreaming. In the quiet just before morning I heard rain begin, soft at first, then a steady drumming on the roof. I thought about roofs and bridges, about scaffolds and harnesses and all the invisible things that hold a life together. And I thought, tomorrow I will walk into a room where no one knows me as someone's daughter-in-law first. I will show them the shape of the work I have done and the work I can do. I will not apologize for being 42 years old and very, very good. When I woke, the rain had washed the air clean. I put on my navy suit, the one that makes me feel like I'm the person I kept promising myself I'd become, hooked my grandmother's pearls into my ears, and packed the tidy portfolio that has always been my real armor. Numbers, strategies, proof. On my desk at Alden Ventures I left a printed copy of the transition document, a neat stack tied with twine, labeled for each team lead. On the top page I wrote a single sentence in blue ink. You have everything you need. Use it. It wasn't a blessing and it wasn't a curse. It was the truest map I could give to people who deserved better than the politics that had stranded us all. Then I took my purse, my phone, and the steadiness I'd earned the hard way, and I walked out into the rain. The interview with Horizon Tech was set for the following Wednesday, but the energy inside me was already shifting by Monday morning. For the first time in 3 years, I walked into the office at Alden Ventures without feeling tethered to it. Every email I answered, every report I approved was a step closer to the door, and I savored that freedom. Arthur avoided me now. I could see him through the glass panels of his office, leaning back in his chair with his fingers pinched over the bridge of his nose, or gesturing sharply during calls. I wondered if he was already calculating how to explain my departure to the board without admitting the obvious truth, that he'd driven away the person who kept the wheels turning. Lily, on the other hand, was everywhere. She floated in and out of departments like a debutante at her own ball, chirping about her fresh perspective, while asking the most basic questions about our biggest accounts. I answered them, but I didn't fill in the spaces that only years of relationship building could occupy. Some things can't be taught in a 2-week crash course. Tuesday, I took an early lunch, leaving the building to clear my head. The February air was cold enough to sting my cheeks, but I welcomed the sharpness. It woke something in me. As I walked, my phone buzzed with a new LinkedIn message. It was from Marcus Williams, Horizon Tech CEO himself. Martha, Rebecca speaks highly of you. Daniel Morrison too. We've been looking for someone with your skill set for a long time. If Wednesday's conversation goes well, expect an offer quickly. We move fast here. I stopped on the sidewalk, letting the words settle over me. They didn't know me as Arthur's daughter-in-law or the predictable, reliable placeholder. They knew me for my work, for my results. That was all I'd ever wanted. When I got back to the office, Margaret from accounting was waiting at my desk with 2 manila folders. I figured you'd want these, she said. They're the updated numbers for Morrison and Anderson. I glanced at the Morrison report. Revenue was steady, but client communication had dropped off drastically in the past month. Lily's handling them now, right? I asked. Margaret nodded grimly. If you can call it handling. They've been asking for you by name. I put the folder down and met her eyes. Margaret, are you looking for other opportunities? Her laugh was short, almost bitter. At 58 in this job market, they'd rather hire someone with a fresh MBA and no idea how to balance a budget. I didn't say what I was thinking, that Horizon Tech was about to grow, and I had every intention of making sure the right people came with me when it did. That night, Joseph and I went over the numbers at the kitchen table. We're fine, he said, tapping the budget spreadsheet he'd put together. Even if there's a gap between jobs, we can manage for months. I don't think there's going to be a gap, I said, sliding my phone across to show him Marcus's message. He read it, then looked up with a slow smile. They'd be lucky to have you. I think they know that, I said, and for the first time in a long time I let myself believe it too. Wednesday came. I arrived at Horizon Tech's offices 20 minutes early, wearing the navy suit and pearl earrings that had become my armor. The lobby was sleek and modern, with glass walls and open spaces buzzing with quiet energy. Rebecca met me with a firm handshake and a smile that felt genuine. We're casual here, she said as she led me down a bright corridor. But we also take our work seriously. You'll find we don't do politics or games. Just results. It was exactly what I wanted to hear. The interviews were fast-paced but comfortable. We talked strategy, client retention, and operational structure. They wanted specifics, not buzzwords, so I gave them specifics. How I'd restructured client communication at Alden Ventures to cut escalation times by 40%. How I'd negotiated new vendor terms that saved the company $250,000 annually. How I'd maintained a 93% retention rate over 3 years. When Marcus joined for the final round, he asked the question I'd been expecting. Why did you leave Alden Ventures? I could have dressed it up, softened it, but I didn't. I reached a ceiling that had nothing to do with my performance or potential. Loyalty without respect is just servitude. I decided I wasn't going to stay in that position any longer. He studied me for a moment, then smiled. We don't believe in ceilings here, Martha. We believe in earned advancement and mutual respect. Can you work with that? It's exactly what I'm looking for, I said. By Friday afternoon, the offer was in my inbox. The salary was 30% higher than my current pay, with bonuses, stock options, and a benefits package that made me blink twice. The title, Regional Operations Director, was the one Arthur had dangled in front of me for years. I signed the contract before the weekend was over. The next Monday, I walked into Alden Ventures knowing my future was secured. Arthur's eyes followed me from his office as I passed, but he didn't call me in. Maybe he'd heard. Maybe he hadn't. It didn't matter. I spent the week tying up loose ends, finalizing my transition document, and quietly reaching out to colleagues I wanted to save from the sinking ship. On my last day, I left the stack of neatly organized folders on my desk, locked my office door, and walked out without looking back. The air outside felt different, lighter, cleaner. I wasn't just leaving a job. I was leaving the version of myself who had once believed that loyalty would be rewarded if I just waited long enough. I didn't plan on looking back at all. But life has a way of making sure you see the consequences, especially when they're exactly what you expected. Because 3 weeks later, the first call came. It was Daniel Morrison. And he wasn't happy. The call came on a gray Thursday morning, the kind where the sky looked like it had been painted over with wet concrete. I was at home, reorganizing my small office space before starting at Horizon Tech the following week, when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. This is Martha, I answered, tucking the phone between my shoulder and ear as I stacked a pile of old training manuals I'd been meaning to shred. Martha, it's Daniel Morrison. I froze mid-step. Morrison Industries had been my largest and most loyal client at Alden Ventures for 3 years. If there was one relationship I thought Arthur would protect at all costs, it was this one. Daniel, I said warmly. It's good to hear your voice. How are things? That's exactly why I'm calling, he said, his tone polite but heavy. Things aren't good. In fact, I'm about to sever our relationship with Alden Ventures entirely. I sank into my desk chair. What happened? Daniel sighed. The sound of someone who'd already tried to be patient and had run out of room. Do you remember how we used to have those monthly strategy calls? The ones where you'd walk me through quarterly projections, and we'd adjust our shipping schedules based on market changes. Of course, I said. We never missed one. Well, your replacement has missed 2 in a row, he said. When she finally did call me back, she couldn't answer basic questions about our account. She kept saying she'd get back to me, but the follow-ups never came. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry, Daniel. I really am. The final straw, he continued, was last week. We had a delivery crisis. A $2 million shipment sitting in the wrong warehouse. We needed someone to coordinate with logistics immediately. You would have been on it in minutes. Instead, she told us to file a complaint through the proper channels and said she'd look into it when she had time. I could almost hear him reliving the moment, his frustration as fresh as if it had just happened. I tried calling Arthur directly, Daniel said. Do you know what he told me? That Lily represented the company's new direction, and if we couldn't adapt to her approach, maybe we weren't the right fit anymore. My jaw tightened. Arthur had just told his largest client to walk. I wanted you to know, Daniel added, his voice softening, that our decision has nothing to do with animosity toward the company as a whole. But the quality of service has fallen apart without you. And frankly, the recommendation I gave Horizon Tech about hiring you? Best piece of business advice I've given in years. We wrapped up the call, and I sat staring at the rain-streaked window. Losing Morrison Industries wouldn't just dent Alden Ventures, it would gut them. They represented nearly a third of the company's annual revenue. That kind of loss meant layoffs. The thought made my stomach twist. Not for Arthur, he'd made his bed, but for the people still there. People like Margaret who'd been quietly holding the place together for decades. The following week, on my second day at Horizon Tech, Rebecca Chin called me into her office. She had a stack of industry reports spread across her desk. We've had 3 companies reach out in the past week asking about our services, she said. All former Alden Ventures clients. And they all specifically mentioned your name. I blinked. Are you saying they contacted you because of me? She nodded. Apparently your reputation for reliability is well known. The question is, do you want to lead the presentations for these accounts? We can respond ethically. Just answer their inquiries without actively pursuing them. Absolutely, I said without hesitation. Over the next month we signed 4 new clients, all from my old portfolio. Each time I sat across from decision-makers who told me variations of the same story. Missed deadlines, poor communication, feeling like an afterthought. I listened, nodded, and outlined exactly how Horizon Tech could fix it. But the hardest conversation came one evening when Margaret called me at home. I got your number from Joseph, she began. I hope you don't mind. Of course not, I said. How are you? Her voice wavered. Honestly, there are rumors about layoffs. Morrison's gone, and now 3 more major accounts have left. People are saying it's because you took your client relationships with you. That's not, I started. I'm not blaming you, she interrupted quickly. We all saw how they treated you. But some of us have mortgages, kids in college. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of it. Margaret, are you looking for something new? At my age. She gave a humorless laugh. Who would hire a 58-year-old accountant? I thought about Horizon Tech's expansion plans. Margaret, can I give Rebecca Chin your contact information? We're going to need experienced financial support. The relief in her voice was immediate. Please do. You're good at what you do, Martha. That should matter more than politics or age. When we hung up, I realized something important. This wasn't about taking Arthur down anymore. This was about saving the good people he'd left vulnerable. And as fate would have it, Arthur was about to learn what happened when you undervalued the very people who kept your business alive. Because 6 months later, an envelope arrived in my mailbox with an embossed Alden Ventures logo on the flap. And inside was an invitation. The invitation was heavy, the kind of thick embossed cardstock you'd expect for a wedding or a gala. Arthur's name was printed in gold script across the top. Alden Ventures Annual Awards Dinner. I sat at the kitchen counter, turning the envelope over in my hands like it was some strange artifact. Joseph glanced up from chopping vegetables. You're not seriously thinking of going, are you? Actually, I traced the edge of the card with my finger. I think I am. He stopped mid-chop and stared at me. Why? So you can sit through another night of Arthur pretending he's the benevolent king of the castle. I smiled faintly. Because I'm not the same person who walked out of that building 6 months ago. I want to walk in there and see who I am now. Joseph shook his head but didn't argue. If you're going, you'd better wear something that reminds him exactly what he lost. The night of the dinner, the grand ballroom downtown shimmered with chandeliers and the low hum of polite conversation. I arrived with Rebecca Chin at my side. She'd insisted on coming, moral support, she said, though I knew she was also curious about the company that had been foolish enough to let me go. I wore an emerald green silk dress that draped perfectly without trying too hard, paired with my grandmother's pearls. The look was deliberate, polished, confident, and utterly unbothered. Cocktail hour was awkward in all the ways I expected. Former colleagues approached me with careful smiles, like they weren't sure if they were allowed to be seen talking to me. Some were genuinely warm, telling me how good it was to see me. Others looked over my shoulder mid-conversation, scanning the room for safer company. Tom from accounting found me near the bar. "Martha," he said, his voice low, "we all miss you. Things haven't been the same since you left. How's everyone holding up?" I asked. He grimaced. Margaret landing that role with Horizon Tech was the best thing that happened to her. And honestly, it's got some of us thinking about making a move too. Sometimes you don't realize you've been settling until you see someone else refuse to. Before I could reply, the lights dimmed, and Arthur stepped onto the stage. The man looked older, his silver hair thinner, his shoulders slightly stooped. But his voice was still the same booming presence I remembered. "Welcome everyone," he began, "to what has been a challenging but enlightening year for Alden Ventures. We've learned valuable lessons about adaptation, about strong leadership, and about recognizing talent wherever it may be found." His eyes found mine across the room, and for a moment, neither of us looked away. He worked through the usual awards: sales achievements, customer service excellence, innovation and problem solving. The applause was polite but lacked the old spark. Then he paused, as if for dramatic effect. "Our final award tonight is a new one," Arthur said. "The Excellence in Leadership recognition goes to someone who may no longer be with our company, but whose impact continues to shape how we do business." My stomach dipped. "Martha Hayes," he said, "would you please come to the stage?" The applause was sudden and loud enough to make my heart race. Rebecca gave me a small nudge. "Go on. This is your moment." I stood, keeping my expression calm, and walked to the stage. Arthur met me halfway, extending a crystal award that caught the light like a prism. "Martha," he said into the microphone, "your dedication to excellence and your commitment to our clients set a standard that continues to inspire our team. While we're sorry to see you've moved on, we want to acknowledge the foundation you built here." I took the mic, turning toward the audience. Faces I'd worked beside for years stared back at me, some smiling, some shifting in their seats, and Lily at the family table visibly squirming. "Thank you," I began. My voice was steady. "Working at Alden Ventures taught me valuable lessons about business, relationships, and most importantly, about knowing your worth." The room quieted, sensing there was more. "I've learned that loyalty is important, but it should never be one-sided. Hard work matters, but only when it's recognized and valued. And sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself, and for your career, is to walk away from situations that no longer serve your growth." The applause this time was scattered, cautious. I wasn't aiming for comfort. "I'm grateful for my time here," I continued, "because it led me to where I am now. At a company that values merit over politics, where ideas are heard no matter who suggests them, and where potential isn't capped by artificial ceilings." I handed the microphone back to Arthur, whose smile had tightened into something more brittle. "Thank you again for this recognition. And to my former colleagues, remember you have more power than you think. Use it wisely." As I walked back to my table, Margaret was the first to start clapping. Tom joined her. Then others followed until the applause rolled through half the room. Not everyone joined in, but enough did to make the message clear. When the dinner ended, Arthur approached as Rebecca and I gathered our things. "Martha, could I have a word?" Rebecca excused herself, leaving us alone for the first time since I'd resigned. "That was quite a speech," he said, his tone unreadable. "It was honest," I replied. "I suppose I deserved that." He looked older up close, the weight of the past year settling into the lines of his face. "You know, we're restructuring the leadership team. If you ever wanted to come back." "Arthur, stop." I met his gaze. "6 months ago, I might have wanted to prove something to you. Tonight, I realized I don't need to prove anything to anyone except myself. The company is struggling without you. The company is struggling because you made decisions based on family loyalty instead of business sense. That's not my problem to solve anymore." I picked up the award, feeling its surprising weight in my hand. "I hope things work out for Alden Ventures. I really do. But my chapter there is closed." And then I walked out of the ballroom without looking back. The night of the awards dinner left me with a strange, buzzing clarity. Not the kind that fades with sleep, but the kind that stays in your bloodstream, making everything sharper. As Rebecca and I walked through the parking garage, she linked her arm through mine. "So," she said, glancing at the crystal award in my hand, "how does it feel to have the last word?" I smiled, and this time it wasn't forced. Like freedom. The drive home was quiet. Joseph was waiting when I stepped through the door, a cup of tea already on the coffee table. "Well?" he asked. "Perfect," I said, meaning every syllable. It was absolutely perfect. In the days that followed, the fallout began to ripple my way, not from Arthur himself, but from the people still inside Alden Ventures. Margaret called first, her voice low. "Martha, you've started something," she said. "People are talking after your speech. Not just about you, but about what it means to stay in a place that doesn't value you. 3 people in my department have updated their resumes in the last week." I could picture it. People who'd been resigned to the slow erosion of their careers suddenly remembering they had options. That was more satisfying than any revenge plot I could have scripted. At Horizon Tech, my world kept expanding. Marcus called me into his office one afternoon. "I hear the Anderson Group is thrilled with the retention strategy you implemented," he said. "They've expanded their contract again. 40% this time. I want you to take over all high-value account strategy, not just operations." It was the kind of offer Arthur had never made me, real authority, real trust. I'd be honored. I told him, and I meant it. 2 weeks later, another familiar name came across my desk. Pacific Financial, one of Alden Ventures' smaller clients, but one I'd always liked working with, wanted to move their business to Horizon Tech. Their reason was blunt. "We're tired of feeling like a number. We want to work with people who actually care." By the end of that quarter, we had signed 6 former Alden Ventures clients. Each time I kept my tone diplomatic, never bad-mouthing Arthur or his leadership. But the truth was obvious. Clients were fleeing because the service and competence had left with me. The industry noticed. At a regional networking event, a man I barely knew cornered me by the coffee table. "So you're the one making Horizon Tech the place to watch," he said with a grin. "Word is, you've got a knack for turning client loyalty into gold." I thanked him, but inwardly, I thought about how Arthur once described me as predictable and reliable, like it was an insult. Those same qualities, paired with actual expertise, were now my greatest currency. One morning, as I was reviewing Q2 projections, my phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line made me pause. Forward. Internal memo, Alden Ventures. It was from Tom in accounting. He'd sent it without comment, just the forwarded text. The memo, signed by Arthur himself, announced a strategic downsizing initiative due to recent shifts in client partnerships. 23 employees were being laid off. I read the list twice, my stomach tightening when I saw names I knew. People who'd worked there longer than I had. People who'd carried the company through lean years without complaint. A second later, another email came through from Margaret. "I'm safe for now, but it's bad here. Morale is shot. Everyone's looking for a lifeboat." I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the city skyline. This wasn't the victory some people might imagine. I hadn't wanted to hurt the good ones. But this was what happened when a leader built a business on nepotism instead of merit. It collapses under its own weight. Later that week, Marcus stopped by my office. "I hear Alden Ventures lost Morrison, Anderson, Pacific, and 4 others in the last quarter," he said, leaning on the doorframe. "Sounds like it," I replied, keeping my tone even. He studied me for a moment, a faint smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "You're not gloating." I shook my head. "I don't need to. The work speaks louder than anything I could say." And it did. By summer's end, Horizon Tech's revenue had jumped by nearly 20%, and my department had grown from 12 employees to 25. I'd hired Margaret into a senior accounting role, and she was thriving, smiling more than I'd ever seen her in our years together at Alden. But the most unexpected moment came one crisp September morning, when I received a hand-delivered envelope. The return address was Alden Ventures. Inside was a short, handwritten note from Arthur. "Martha, I underestimated you. I see that now. The company is not what it was, and I can't pretend otherwise. If you ever wanted to return, I'd be willing to discuss terms on your own conditions. Arthur." I set the note down, almost laughing. Not because it wasn't sincere, it probably was, but because it was too late. I didn't need anything from Arthur anymore. I picked up my pen and wrote one line back. Thank you for the offer. I'm exactly where I need to be. No signature flourish, no explanation. Just the truth. When the courier came to collect it, I felt the kind of quiet satisfaction that lingers longer than applause. Arthur's company might limp along for a while longer, but its core, the people, the trust, the stability was already gone. And for the first time in my career, I was exactly where I belonged, building something that would last. The weeks after Arthur's note were some of the most peaceful I'd had in years. Horizon Tech was thriving, my team was solid, and the constant hum of stress that had once been my background noise was gone. I woke up looking forward to my work, not bracing for another day of politics and quiet betrayals. By late autumn, I'd stopped hearing regular updates about Alden Ventures. When I did, it was always the same. Another client gone, another restructuring, another good employee quietly slipping out the door. I didn't chase the news, it had nothing to do with me anymore. But the ripples still found their way to my desk. Then, one frosty November morning, Margaret walked into my office with a coffee in each hand. Got a minute? She asked. Always, I said, taking the cup she offered. She sat down with a small smile. Remember how you said leaving Alden Ventures wasn't about revenge? It wasn't, I said carefully, though I knew where this was going. Well, you still got it, she said, a glint in her eye. They just lost another major account, Baldwin Logistics. That's going to hit them hard. And you know the funny part? The new Baldwin rep told me they reached out to us because they'd heard we don't play favorites. I leaned back in my chair, letting the words sink in. That had always been Arthur's flaw. He played favorites so openly it poisoned the whole structure. And now the market was simply returning the favor. By winter, Horizon Tech's growth was impossible to ignore. Marcus called me into the boardroom one afternoon. The long glass table was already set with quarterly reports, and every executive was there. Martha, Marcus said, we want to offer you the role of Vice President of Client Strategy. You've brought in more high-value accounts in 8 months than we projected in 3 years. We want you in the driver's seat. I accepted without hesitation. The title, the salary, the influence. It was everything Arthur had once implied I was too predictable to handle. The irony wasn't lost on me. In early December, I ran into Lily at a holiday charity gala. She looked thinner, her smile a little forced. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize her without the confident gloss she'd worn like armor. Martha, she said, her voice catching just slightly. It's good to see you. And you, I replied. She hesitated. I don't know if you've heard, but things haven't been easy. Uncle Arthur, he meant well, but... She trailed off, shrugging. I wasn't ready. Not for any of it. I met her eyes. Then I hope you find something you are ready for. Her shoulders dropped in what looked like relief. Maybe because I wasn't there to twist the knife. I didn't need to. Life had done that for me. A week later, I came home to find Joseph setting up the Christmas tree. The Crystal Award from Alden Ventures was on the bookshelf beside a framed photo from my first day at Horizon Tech. 2 symbols of the same journey, one representing the place where I'd been underestimated, the other proof of where I'd risen when I stopped waiting for permission. I stood there for a long moment, feeling the quiet hum of contentment. Joseph glanced over. Penny for your thoughts? I smiled, just thinking that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. He set the last ornament on a branch and came to stand beside me. What is it then? Becoming the person you were always meant to be, I said. And making sure the wrong people never get to decide your worth again. The lights on the tree reflected off the Crystal Award, scattering small sparks of color across the walls. I didn't need Arthur's approval anymore. I didn't need the old title or the old promises. I had something better, dignity, peace, and a place where I was valued for what I actually brought to the table. And that, I realized, was worth more than any promotion could have ever been.